The Quiet Strength of Love. Chapter 1. The Call That Split the Morning. The call came at 6:12 a.m., that quiet, fragile hour when the day hasn't decided yet whether it will be kind. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, vibrating against the wood like it was nervous. She stared at it for a second, half asleep, annoyed, already rehearsing a polite excuse for whoever was calling too early. Then she saw the number. Hospitals always have numbers that feel anonymous. No personality, no warmth. Just a series of digits that somehow already carry bad news. She sat up before answering. "Hello? Is this Emily Carter?" the woman asked. "Yes. This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about your grandfather, Henry Carter. He was admitted last night with a heart attack." The room tilted slightly. Not enough to knock her down, just enough to let her know something important had shifted. "He's stable," the nurse continued quickly, trained to say that part first. "He's awake. We'd like you to come in if you're able." Emily pressed her hand flat against her chest, as if her own heart needed reassurance. "I'll be there," she said. After the call ended, she sat very still. The morning light crept through the blinds, touching the walls of her apartment. The couch she'd bought secondhand. The framed photo of her grandfather teaching her how to fish when she was 6. His hat pulled low. Her grin missing 2 teeth. Her grandfather. The man who raised her in all the quiet ways that never make it into family stories. She dressed without thinking. Jeans, sweater, sneakers. She forgot her jacket and didn't go back for it. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. Her breath fogged as she walked to the car. She realized she was shaking only once she started the engine. Chapter 2. The man who taught her how to stay calm. Hospitals have a rhythm of their own. Emily felt it the moment she walked through the automatic doors. The steady hum of machines, the distant beeping, the quiet urgency of footsteps that never quite ran. She followed the signs to the cardiac unit, each step heavier than the last. When she reached his room, she stopped with her hand on the door. She wasn't ready. She'd seen her grandfather as strong her entire life, not loud or dramatic, just solid. The kind of man who fixed things without announcing it, who listened more than he spoke, who always showed up early and stayed until the end. Seeing him fragile felt like breaking a rule she didn't know could be broken. She pushed the door open. He was lying in the bed, propped slightly upright, wires resting against his chest, a thin blanket pulled up to his waist. His face looked paler than usual, but unmistakably his. When he heard the door, his eyes opened, and when he saw her, they softened. "Well," he said, his voice rough but teasing, "you look like hell." Her laugh escaped before she could stop it, shaky, wet, real. "You scared me," she said, crossing the room in 3 steps. He smiled gently. That wasn't the plan. She took his hand. It felt smaller than she remembered. Not weaker, just older. His thumb brushed against the back of her hand in a slow, familiar motion. He'd done that her whole life. When she was nervous before a test. When she cried after her first breakup. When she sat beside him at her grandmother's funeral, unable to understand how the world could keep going. "You didn't have to come so fast," he said. She swallowed. "Yes, I did." They sat like that for a long moment, hand in hand, the machines breathing for him quietly. "I was thinking about you last night," he said. That made her heart tighten. "Why?" she asked. "Because you always worry too much," he said with a faint smile. "And I didn't want you worrying." She shook her head, tears finally spilling. "That's not how this works." He squeezed her hand a little tighter. "Emily," he said, more serious now, "listen to me. I've had a good life, and a big part of it is sitting right here." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his hand. "You're not done," she said softly. "You still have things to teach me." He chuckled. "Like what?" "How to stay calm," she said, "when everything feels like it's falling apart." His eyes filled, just slightly. "You already know that," he said. "You just forget sometimes." They sat together as the morning grew brighter outside the window. And for the first time since the phone call, Emily felt something other than fear. She felt hope. Chapter 3: The Man Who Was Always There. Emily had never called him Grandpa when she was little. She called him Pop. It was easier to say. Softer. It fit the way he moved through her life. Quietly, without needing attention. Pop had been there long before she understood what that meant. When her parents' marriage cracked under the weight of things neither of them knew how to say out loud, Pop was the one who showed up without questions. He didn't pick sides. He didn't explain adults to children. He just stayed. Emily remembered sitting at his kitchen table when she was 8, feet swinging above the floor, watching him fix a broken radio. He didn't curse when it didn't work right away. He didn't rush. "Some things take patience," he'd said, not looking up. "And some things just need someone willing to sit with them." At the time, she thought he was talking about the radio. Now, sitting beside his hospital bed, she knew better. Pop had walked her to the school bus every morning for years, rain or shine, even when she told him she was old enough to go alone. "I know," he'd say. "I just like the walk." He never missed a recital, a game, a parent-teacher meeting. He sat in folding chairs and bleachers and stiff auditorium seats, clapping the loudest even when she barely knew what she was doing. When her grandmother died, Pop didn't pretend to be strong. He cried. But he still made dinner, still packed lunches, still asked Emily how her day had been. That was who he was. Not perfect, just present. And now, watching his chest rise and fall beneath thin hospital sheets, Emily felt the weight of all the moments she'd assumed would always be there. Chapter 4: The night she was afraid to leave. Visiting hours ended at 9. The nurse came in softly, her voice gentle but firm. "We're going to need you to head out for the night." Emily nodded, already standing, already gathering her bag, but her body didn't move toward the door. Pop noticed. "Hey," he said quietly. "I'll be right here." She forced a smile. "I know." But knowing didn't help. She leaned down and hugged him carefully, afraid of hurting him, afraid of letting go. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. "I'll hold you to that," he replied. She walked out of the room and down the hallway that suddenly felt too long. The lights buzzed overhead. The floor shone like it had been polished too well, reflecting her own face back at her. Pale, tired, younger than she felt. In the parking lot, she sat in her car with the engine off. For the first time since childhood, she was afraid to leave him alone. Love does that. It rewires your sense of safety. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough to let the pressure out. Then she drove home. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the machines beside his bed. Every quiet moment felt like something waiting to go wrong. At 3:17 a.m., she checked her phone again. No missed calls. She finally slept just before sunrise. Chapter 5: The Things He Taught Her Without Trying. By the third day, the hospital stopped feeling foreign. Emily learned the rhythm of it. Which elevator was faster? Which nurse smiled with her eyes? Which hour the hallway grew quieter? She brought Pop fresh socks and a paperback he'd already read twice, just because he liked the weight of a book in his hands. They talked in fragments, about the weather, about a neighbor who still hadn't fixed his fence, about nothing important. And yet, everything felt important. At one point, Pop dozed off mid-sentence, his breathing slow and even. Emily sat still, afraid that moving might break the moment. She watched his face, the lines carved by years of sun and laughter, the familiar slope of his nose. She thought about all the things he'd taught her without ever sitting her down to teach. How to wait without complaining. How to notice small things. Birds on a wire. The smell of rain on pavement. How to keep your word even when no one was watching. When she was 12 and scared of the dark, he hadn't laughed. He'd installed a small lamp in the hallway and left it on every night until she stopped needing it. Everyone needs a little light, he'd said. Now the roles felt reversed. She was the one sitting vigil, the one making sure the lights stayed on. Chapter 6. The fear she carried quietly. Pop was improving. The doctors said so. His color looked better. He cracked jokes again. But Emily carried fear like a second heartbeat. She didn't say it out loud. She smiled. She nodded. She thanked the nurses. Inside, she counted breaths. At night, she replayed worst-case scenarios she hated herself for imagining. Love does that too. It teaches you how to picture loss in painful detail. One afternoon, as she adjusted his blanket, Pop looked at her carefully. "You're scared," he said. She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. "A little," she admitted. He nodded. "That's okay. I don't want to lose you," she said. The words came out smaller than she expected. Pop reached for her hand, slower now, but sure. "You won't," he said. "Not the way you think." She frowned. "What does that mean?" He smiled softly. "It means I've already given you everything I can." Her throat tightened. "That's not true," she said. "I still need you." He squeezed her hand. "And I'm still here." They sat like that, the quiet stretching comfortably between them. For the first time since the call, Emily let herself believe the future might still include him. Not as a miracle, not as a promise, but as a shared intention. And that felt like enough to keep going. Chapter 7. The Day the Doctor Smiled. It happened on a Thursday. Emily noticed the change before anyone said anything official. Pop looked more awake, more here. He sat up a little straighter, asked for real food instead of whatever the tray brought, complained about the coffee like it mattered again. That was always the sign with him. When things mattered, he complained. The cardiologist came in mid-morning, flipping through a tablet, shoes squeaking faintly on the floor. Emily stood automatically, heart racing. "Well," the doctor said, smiling before she even spoke. "Your grandfather is doing remarkably well." Pop raised an eyebrow. "I keep telling people that." The doctor chuckled. "If things continue like this, we'll be talking about discharge very soon." Emily felt something inside her release. Not all at once, not dramatically, but like a tight knot slowly loosening. "Really?" she asked. The doctor nodded. He listened, he rested, and he's stronger than he looks. Pop reached for Emily's hand under the blanket, squeezing it gently. "I had good motivation," he said. The doctor left them with instructions, pamphlets, and a list of things Pop would now have to pretend to follow very seriously. As soon as the door closed, Emily sat down hard in the chair and laughed. A quiet, shaky laugh that turned into tears halfway through. Pop watched her with the same patient expression he'd worn her whole life. "It's okay," he said. "You can let go a little now." She wiped her face. I don't know how." He smiled. "You'll learn." Chapter 8. Going Home. The day Pop was discharged felt unreal. The hospital doors opened automatically, sunlight spilling across the floor like a blessing that didn't ask permission. Pop paused just inside them, breathing deeply, as if reminding his body what fresh air felt like. Emily stood beside him, holding his arm, not because he needed it, but because she did. The drive home was slow, intentional. Pop commented on things he hadn't noticed in weeks: a new stop sign, a restaurant that had closed, a dog sitting proudly in the back of a pickup truck. "World didn't wait for me," he said. Emily smiled. It never does. At his house, she helped him settle into his favorite chair. The same one he'd sat in for years, reading the paper, watching the evening news, pretending not to nap. He looked around, taking it all in. "Good to be back," he said softly. She made soup. He criticized it lovingly. They ate together in the quiet, sunlight slanting through the window, dust floating lazily in the air. Everything felt ordinary, and that felt extraordinary. Chapter 9. What Love Looks Like Up Close. In the weeks that followed, Emily came by often, not because she was afraid anymore, because she wanted to. They walked slowly around the block, sat on the porch in the evenings, watched old movies neither of them really liked, but both pretended to. One afternoon, as they sat side by side, Pop took her hand. "You know," he said, "when you were little, I used to worry I wasn't doing enough." She laughed softly. "You did everything." He shook his head. "I just stayed." She looked at him then, really looked. His hands were thinner now, his movements slower, but the man was the same, steady, present, loving in ways that didn't demand anything back. She squeezed his hand. "I'll stay too," she said. He smiled. "I know." Chapter 10. A Heart That Kept Beating. Months later, Pop stood in the yard, leaning on a rake, sunlight warming his face. Emily watched from the porch. She realized something then. Love doesn't always announce itself with big moments. Sometimes it's just survival. Sometimes it's showing up again and again. Pop looked over and caught her watching. "What?" he asked. She shook her head, smiling through tears she didn't bother hiding. "Nothing," she said. "Just glad you're here." He nodded once. "Me too." Epilogue. The way he held my hand. A year later, Emily noticed something small. Pop walked faster now. Not fast, just faster than before. Enough to make her smile when she caught herself slowing down to match him. They sat on the porch most evenings. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. The world didn't demand explanations out here. One night, as the sun dropped low and the air cooled, Pop reached for her hand. Not because he needed support, not because he was afraid, just because it felt right. "You know," he said, staring out at the yard, "I never worried much about my heart before all this." Emily glanced at him. "You should have." He chuckled. "Maybe, but now I think I understand something." She waited. "I didn't survive because I was strong," he said. "I survived because I wasn't alone." Her chest tightened. She squeezed his hand the same way she had in that hospital room, the same way she had when she was small and the world felt too big. "You were never alone," she said. He turned to her then, eyes warm, steady. "And neither were you." The evening settled around them. Crickets starting up, the porch light humming softly. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just two people sitting together, hearts beating, time moving forward. Emily rested her head against his shoulder, and for the first time since that early morning phone call, she didn't feel afraid of the future. She felt grateful for the present. Because love doesn't always need saving. Sometimes, it just needs time. And sometimes, a heart that almost stopped beats stronger than ever because someone stayed. If this story touched you, take a moment before you go. If you've ever held someone's hand in a hospital room or worried you might lose someone you love, this story was meant for you. If it resonated, leave a comment, even a few words. It helps these quiet stories reach others who need them. Like and subscribe if you want more gentle human audio stories about love, family, and the moments that matter most. And if this story reminded you of someone, consider sharing it with them. Thank you for listening, and thank you for staying.